In Venezuela, the National Electoral Council ratified the success of the simulation for the referendum in the defense of the Essequibo. In Dominican Republic, authorities confirmed death toll rose to 21 after heavy torrential rains. In Liberia, political veteran Joseph Boakai was declared winner of Liberia's presidential election. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Razabal from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On the other hand, the National Electoral Council of Venezuela ratified the success of the mock referendum in defense of the Essequibo, where the participation tripled with respect to other tests. During the press conference, the president of the National Electoral Council, Elvis Amoroso, congratulated the citizen and participation of the Venezuelan people in a mock election exercise prior to referendum on December 3rd. In a speech, Amoroso informed the electoral schedule for the consultation in defense of the Essequibo territory and thanked the public authorities and political institutions for their support to the referendum. The official assured that during the drill, all the technical, logistic, and operative protocols established for the exercise were complied with, and the effectiveness of the process was verified, as well as the high participation.
The most important was the high level of participation of the voters, which resulted in the Venezuelan people standing in line until late at night looking to participate in this simulation and become familiar with this process that is in full development. The voting per polling station tripled, a fact that reaffirms the record of participation in an electoral simulation.
The president of the Venezuelan National Electoral Council, Elvis Amoroso, thanked the people of Venezuela for the support and confirmed participation in the December 3rd referendum.
Once again, we thank the people of Venezuela and all the presidents of the public powers for all the support they have been given to the National Electoral Council, to the electoral powers as one of the 5 powers of the homeland. But we continue to insist that the most important thing is this electoral process is you, Venezuelan citizens, who are participating massively in this program. And we are sure that the next December 3rd, you will come massively to express your absolute will. Thank you very much to all of you.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, participates with the Chief of the National Army in the parade in commemoration of the 113th anniversary of the Mexican Revolution. Close to 1,500 members of the armed forces will participate in the activity dedicated to the participation of women in the revolutionary competition. During the event, recognition will be given to the Mexican delegation of athletes who participated in the Pan American Games in Santiago, Chile, where the country took 3rd place in the medal standings. Likewise, episodes that gave rise to the revolution movement in 1910 will be staged. In Panama, teacher groups as indigenous groups continue on Monday the strict closing actions to demand the repeal of Law 406, which approved the concession between the states and Minera, Panama. The social movement marched to the Supreme Court of Justice to demand that it pronounce on the unconstitutionality lawsuits presented in rejection of the mining contract. On the other hand, the Supreme Court informed that once the deadline for arguments for 2 of the 10 lawsuits presented ended this November 22nd and 23rd, they will in permanent session on November 24th until they issue their decision on them. The National Institute of Statistics, INN, reported that the unemployment rate increased by 8.6% in the country. According to INN, more than 161,000 people are looking for work without finding it. The highest employment rate is located in the interior of the country, where it rose from 8.5 to 8.9%. In Montevideo, it increased by 1/10 of a percentage point to 8.2%, although previous INE reports indicate that in September the national employment rate was 8.3%. Dominican Republic authorities confirmed death toll rose to 21 after heavy torrential rains. The weather event forced the evacuation of more than 13,000 people from their homes, and preliminary data reports that it affected more than 2,000 homes and left 45 communities cut off from communication. Among the most notable damages are problems in 24 circuits of the electricity distribution company, and 110 aqueducts of the National Drinking Water and Sewerage Institute were out of service. Emergency services are still working in the area as it feared that there may be more victims. President Luis Abinader described it as the event for the highest rainfall ever recorded in the country, with values of 131 millimeters in some areas. In this context, authorities declared 3 days of national mourning following the Delhi floodings. The national mourning will be in effect from Monday to Wednesday, November 22nd. During these 3 days, the national flag will fly at half-mast in military installations and in public buildings throughout the Dominican Republic. On the other hand, it was reported that 30 out of the 32 provinces are still on alert, 14 of them in red, 12 in yellow, and 4 in green, due to the heavy rainfall, which also triggered cuts in basic services such as electricity and drinking water in some regions. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Our start is coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Palestine, after 45 days since the beginning of Israel's invasion of Gaza, occupation forces continue to carry out military incursions in the region, killing hundreds of Palestinians. Local sources reported that during Monday night, Israeli fighter jets launched a series of attacks in the northwest of Khan Yunis town in southern Gaza, killing dozens of citizens, most of them women and children. In another attack in northern Gaza, the occupation artillery shelled the Kawai school near the Indonesian hospital, which was operating as a shelter for several displaced Palestinians. The number of wounded and killed and the amount of damage caused by the shelling of the school is currently unknown due to the disruption of communications in the northern Gaza Strip, as well as the impossibility for ambulances to access the sites due to the siege. In Gaza, citizens suffer the consequences of forced displacements, and they now have to live in the streets suffering from the inclement weather.
It is too difficult. It is more than you can imagine. Rains and winds blowing hard. The tent fell on us where we were sitting. In general, life here is very hard. The winds are very strong, and as you can see, the tent fell on us here along with the children. Tell us, daughter, what happened to the tent?
Fell on us and we suffocated.
Life here is extremely difficult, apart from the fact that we were forcibly displaced. Do we have to suffer this too? For God's sake, that can't be. It shouldn't be for the little ones. What is the fault of these children? This is their life.
We ran away.
Why did you run away?
We ran away from the bombing.
From where we fled, the bombing was impressive. And here also strong winds and a very hard life where we have absolutely nothing. It is a life that not even the dogs have.
On Monday, local media announced that 31 premature babies arrived in Egypt, although the Rafah avoided crossing after being transferred from the hospital of the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Red Crescent confirmed the evacuation and moving of the babies reported as patients in critical condition who were in Al-Shifa Hospital, adding that it took place in coordination with the World Health Organization and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. On the other hand, according to Mohamed Sakut, director of the Gaza Hospital, stressed that more than 250 patients with several infected wounds and other urgent disease remain in Al-Shifa, and the health institution pointed out that it is unable to provide more of the treatment after running out of water, medical supplies, and fuel for energy emergency generators due to a power outage throughout the territory. The first field hospital sent by Jordan arrived in Palestine's southern Gaza on Monday. The trust carrying the hospital, the first facility of this kind since October 7th, together with 170 health personnel, arrived in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip, where the hospital will be installed. Weeks of intense bombardments and acute shortages of fuel and medical supplies have been prompted the collapse of Gaza's health system, with the majority of hospitals no longer functioning. Palestinian authorities made an appeal to the international community to ask for support to the country's health system. According to official reports, the conflict has left so far around 30,000 wounded across Gaza and 30,000 killed, mostly civilians. The executive director of WHO's Health Emergency Program, Michael Ryan, announced that the situation of primary health care in Gaza is catastrophic.
There were 24 facilities, hospitals north of that line. 21 of those are now entirely dysfunctional and only 3 partially functioning. There were only 11 facilities south of the Wadi Gaza line before. Before this conflict, there were 3,500 beds in Gaza. The vast majority of those beds were centered around Gaza City, and particularly around big hospitals like Al-Shifa and the Indonesian hospital. The Al-Shifa hospital has been there for 75 years and has been the absolute backbone of health service provision in Gaza over that time.
The executive director of the World Health Organization Health Emergency Program also added that the problem of climate change affects children.
The sudden drop in temperature is going to create a problem with pneumonia in children. The stress that those kids are under, the nutritional status that those children have, make it a recipe for epidemics. This is an absolute recipe for large-scale epidemics amongst this population, and that, as a public health risk, right now will begin to approach the same level as the injury crisis that we have and the crisis in the hospitals.
On Monday, President Mahmoud Abbas met with his Latin counterpart Edgar Shrinkevich at the presidential headquarters in Ramallah. Abbas briefed the Latin president on the latest developments in the occupied Palestinian territory. The Palestinian president stressed the necessity of immediately stopping the Israeli occupation's all-out aggression against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank and its crime of genocide, speeding up entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza, and that they need to release the Palestinian funds held by the Israeli occupation government. The president stressed that the security and peace are achieved by ending the Israeli occupation of the land of the state of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The Chinese government urges the international community to act immediately to put an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. During a meeting with a delegation of the Arab and Islamic foreign ministers in Beijing, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, Wang Yi, regretted the humanitarian catastrophe that the Palestinian people in Gaza are going through. Wang Yi assured that the situation also affects all the countries of the world, for which he considered that the fundamental and basic principles of humanity must be reconsidered. The Chinese foreign minister stressed that injustice against Palestine must end and assured that his country is working to promote a ceasefire and put an end to the war. The government of Syria demands to prosecute the Israeli occupation authorities before the International Criminal Court for war crimes committed against the Palestinian people. Our correspondent Hisham Wanous tells us the details in the following report.
The Syrian Bar Association has to activate the commission formed by the Federation of Arab Lawyers at the beginning of November to bring before the European courts and the International Criminal Court the file of war crimes committed by the Zionist occupation entity against Gaza, a genocide and a flagrant violation of international law, which the Syrian lawyers claim to use all legal means at their disposal to prosecute and punish its perpetrators.
Palestine is already a member of the International Criminal Court, and on this basis it can file a lawsuit against Israeli crimes before this court, and we as Syrian lawyers, as well as lawyers from numerous countries of the world, will support this Palestinian step in pursuing and prosecuting the authorities of the Israeli occupation regime for violating international treaties, norms and conventions, headed by the Conventions Against the Crimes of Collective Extermination currently committed by Israeli troops in the occupied territories.
The Syrian Foreign Ministry, in addition to demanding that Israeli officials and soldiers of this regime, which it described as criminal and fascist, be held accountable for their brutal crimes, condemned the use of internationally banned white phosphorus by the occupying force in their repeated attacks on civilians in the Gaza Strip, and called on the organization to ban chemical weapons and to investigate the use of such weapons by the Tel Aviv regime.
Fortunately, our compliance and announcements clash with the refusal of the great Western powers that keep the UN Security Council, OPCW, and the other relevant international organizations paralyzed, and our work is hindered by the actions of these powers that adopt a partial position in favor of the occupation regime, preventing it from being judged and penalized for its crimes and preventing international law from being applied equally to everyone.
Meanwhile, and despite the fact that, like Syria, many countries around the world are demanding a halt to what they consider an Israeli war of extermination against Gaza, the Israeli occupation forces, in defiance and violation of international law, continue their indiscriminate bombardment of homes, residential buildings, schools, and hospitals in a crime against humanity that for more than a month and a half has been affecting all the inhabitants of this Palestinian coastal enclave, particularly children, women, and the elderly.
We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's more recent events. Final show break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Germany, the leader of African countries arrived on Monday in Berlin to participate in the conference of G20 Compact with Africa. In this conference, they will discuss a possible extension of the economic collaboration with Europe. The event was organized by the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, indicated that the objective is to improve economic conditions in the states of the African continent that participate in the pact in order to strengthen private foreign investment. Among the main topics of the G20 Compact Conference with Africa is cooperation on sustainable energy supply. The event is also attended by the President of the World Bank and High Bank, the President of the Commission of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, and the French President, Emmanuel Macron. In the largest mafia trials ever held in Italy against the 'Ndrangheta crime group, 207 defendants were sentenced to a total of 2,100 years in prison. A judicial report indicates that the proceedings were initiated in January 2021 against 322 people allegedly linked to this criminal organization. After 35 days of deliberations, the judge read the sentence. The defendants were charged with membership of mafia associations, extortion, illegal possession of weapons and explosives, influence peddling, homicide, corruption, abuse of power, and drug trafficking. They were arrested in 2019 in Operation Renicite the Scots, which included arrests not only in Italy but also in Bulgaria, Switzerland, and Germany. In these trials, Saverio Racionale and Paolino Lovianco, two of the most important mafia bosses of the 'Ndrangheta, were sentenced to 30 years in prison. On Monday in Turkey, the sinking of a merchant ship in the Black Sea left at least one dead and more than a dozen missing. Authorities of the Ministry of the Interior indicated that the ship Karl Medved, which was transporting cargo from the Russian port to national territory, sank due to the bad weather conditions in the area. According to the information, during the search effort, the lifeless body of one of the 12 Turkish crew members on the vessel was recovered. According to the Ministry of the Interior, 4 rescue teams, boats, planes, and a helicopter have been deployed in the area of the accident in order to locate the missing persons. On Monday, political veteran Joseph Boakai was declared winner of Liberia's presidential election. The National Electoral Commission has declared veteran politician Joseph Boakai the winner of the presidential elections in Liberia, beating the incumbent President George Weah. The Commission chairman told reporters that Boakai won with 50.64% of the votes, compared to 49.36% of the vote for former international soccer star Weah. Boakai won with only a narrow margin of 20,577 votes. The outgoing president and former soccer star received praise from abroad on Monday for conceding and promoting a non-violent position in a region notorious for coups. On Monday, the Chad opposition leader Success Mara urged the followers to national reconciliation. The leader of the Chadian Transformers Party urged his followers to reach out to the government of the interim president Mahamat Deby and also call necessary revenge. Mara had just returned from exile under an agreement reached with the military authorities after 12 months following the repression of the street protests against the postponement of the general elections. Mara said that he has returned with the same determination to fight and make justice and equality realities in Chad. The opposition protests against the postponement of the election left, according to official data, have 100 dead, although opposition sources assure that the number of dead due to the government repression exceeded 300. Before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. And we have come to an end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Adenebro Sabal. Thank you for watching.